You just talked to Congressman Stephen Lynch about the unusual international moves and statements coming out of the White House lately. Tell us about that.
Yeah, Congressman Lynch is in the midst of a sort of media offensive. I talked to him about the international developments, domestic developments too, which we can get to in a moment. But he had some extremely harsh words for the Trump administration coming off its invasion of Venezuela. I asked him if he thought that that was a one-off or that, in fact, there were going to be similar actions to come. Maybe Cuba, maybe Greenland. There was talk of Colombia, although that now seems to have simmered down a little bit. And he offered a very, I think, harsh judgment of where we are right now as a country as Trump eyes further military action elsewhere around the globe. We can take a listen.
You can't make this stuff up that he's talking about invading Greenland, which is pure buffoonery. We're becoming a gangster nation because we're stronger than a country. We can go in there and take over.
And that gangster nation phrase really jumped out at me. Of course, there's precedent for us, going in and taking over in the past. We have a long history of doing it in Latin America, but we're doing it a little more obliquely, a little less directly. But yeah, the disappointment that I heard from him really jumped out.
Yeah, and I would just add in also, I mean, there was talk of the Don Roe doctrine.
Right.
And, but Greenland is actually not in the Western Hemisphere, people have pointed out. So I think there's an expansive view even of how far the president is willing to go.
Yeah, there does seem to be. And I mean, we've talked before about how it's this dizzying moment where everything seems to be on the table. It would not be surprising to wake up and learn that we had invaded Greenland, which is administered, co-governed by a NATO ally.
Yes,
it's entirely possible.
Right.
Stephen Miller was talking about it this week. So
right, and then of course we've had two shootings now by immigration agents.
Yep.
One by ICE and one by, I believe it's Customs and Border Enforcement officer in Portland was the one we're talking about this morning.
I think that's right. But he also had a very, very harsh judgment of what happened in Minneapolis, because we talked before the events in Portland. Harsh judgment not only of what happened in Minneapolis, but the way the government has represented what happened, which he seemed bowled over by, I'm putting words in his mouth here, but I think they're accurate, the fundamental dishonesty of the way the Trump administration has portrayed, again, this lethal shooting in Minneapolis. Take a listen.
They pushed that out there to their favorite news stations. And clearly, they were lying. They were lying. Clearly, it was not how the president or how Secretary Noem depicted it in their statements.
And obviously, what he's saying there is that they're lying about the idea that this was self-defense on the part of the agent who killed the woman.
Yeah. Well, we're going to turn now to local politics. But I'm going to start by, again, opinions about the Trump administration and what they do in local politics. And this is Michelle Wu being sworn in for her second term this week. And during her inauguration speech, she talked about local issues, of course, like improving Boston schools, doing something about the housing crunch.
Right.
But she also did take the opportunity to once again lace into President Trump. And she didn't name him, but it's clear. Let's listen to that.
This federal administration has plundered our economy, ravaged our reputation, torched our institutions, and destroyed the lives of our people. But when, in the course of human events...
And I'm going to fade down the rest of that. She goes on to rewrite the opening of the Declaration of Independence. So I was saying to you, I might want to give this inauguration speech, call it the No King speech for her inauguration.
I think that's an accurate description. I mean, she has proven time and time again to, I think, be one of the most forceful and articulate critics of the Trump administration that we see on the national landscape at any level of government. She was reprising that. I think it's to her political advantage to be seen as going toe-to-toe with the president. I don't think that's why she's doing it. I think she has genuine contempt for the way the president is approaching governing the United States. But I do think that there is some benefit to her. It almost it almost allows her to transcend what's happening locally. If things go wrong locally, she is in the midst of a much bigger fight, and I don't think that's disadvantageous to her.
Yeah, and actually, as I think about it, I mean, she gave that speech before these shootings that we're
She
talking
did.
about in Minneapolis and Portland, and part of me thought when I heard it, well, is that really top of mind for people in Boston to keep hearing her bashing the Trump administration? But now we're hearing hundreds of people out protesting yesterday, today, Boston and other cities. So, yeah, maybe it really is top of mind.
It's funny. There's so much happening, so many unusual things happening that I think our sense of time can be warped a little bit. She gave the speech, 2 days after the invasion of Venezuela, right? Which now seems like it was a few months ago because so much else has happened since then.
Yeah.
So I think it's whenever she strikes the sort of tone she struck in her inaugural speech, I think it's there will be something happening that will make it timely.
Well, staying with Boston and city politics, we also have a new city council president in Boston, and that caught your interest. Why?
It caught my interest because I think the way this process went down highlights the extent to which Michelle Wu is in total control of city government. The council president originally seemed like it was going to be Gabriela Coletta Zapata, who is a Wu ally. Then it seemed like it was going to be Brian Worrell, who is seen as wanting the council to cultivate a little more independence from Michelle Wu. Then a couple Wu allies made a late-night visit on Sunday evening, the day before the vote, to Liz Breadon, who represents us here in Brighton, where GBH is located, basically saying, hey, why don't you be a compromise candidate? The long and short of it, and I've tried to steer clear of the minutia, is that it went from being a pro or a Wu ally as the city council president in waiting to someone who is more interested in the council flexing its muscle, maybe pushing back against Mayor Wu, back to a Wu ally. And there's always horse trading that goes on behind the scenes. You hear people announcing a month in advance of the vote that they've got the votes locked up to be council president. It is never an especially transparent process. But this year, I think the way it shook out highlights the extent to which, Wu does not really have any effective meaningful opposition in the city. There's a small block of city councilors, a minority block that is willing to question her, and that's about it.